in trying to assess the importance of 2012, I thought it would be interesting to find the opinions of shamans on the other side of the world, because we know what the Mayan shamans think, and by extension a lot of the North American Native American tribes, and so we know that point of view. So, but the word shaman is originally a Siberian word, and shamans in Siberia are particularly respected and considered powerful. So I decided to go to Siberia and find some shamans and talk to them. So there's this informal global network of shamans where the Guatemalan guys gave me some leads, which worked out after a fashion after a while and with a lot of luck. And so I ended up on in the town of Irkutsk, which is on the Siberian-Mongolian border, near Lake Baikal, which is truly one of the magical places in the world. It's the largest freshwater lake in the world. 1/5 of the world's freshwater supply resides in that lake. It's gorgeous. It's fed by, I forget the number, like 800 rivers. It's just magnificent. And inside Lake Baikal is an island called Olkhon, which is a magically sunny island. And in Siberia, it tends not to be very sunny very frequently, but Olkhon has, I think, 220 sunny days per year, which there is astonishing. And it's warmer, and it's brighter, and it's lovelier than the surroundings. And shamans from that part of the world consider it kind of a Vatican, because it's got this natural magnificence, which, you know, suits them just fine. And as luck would have it, when I went to Irkutsk, I happened onto a shaman convention, which there's no such thing really normally, but there's a group of people called the Buryat, who are basically Mongolian diaspora people who meet once every 2 years in a different city. And normally the shamans don't attend, but because Irkutsk was so close to Olkhon, there were shamans from everywhere. And I wanted to ask these folks, men and women, what they thought about 2012. I mean, did it mean anything to them? And so the good news, in a nutshell, is that to them 2012 is not a be-all end-all date, an avalanche date for the whole world, and it's not really, you know, particularly significant in the course of world history. And the bad news is, it is for the West. They seem to think that 2012 is truly a pivotal point for the West's decline to accelerate, and they consider it an avalanche date for us. And I wanted to know, well, you know, what are we doing wrong? I mean, from their point of view, I mean, why are we going down and they're not? And I expected, I don't know, a variety of answers, maybe ecological explanations or political diatribes. I wasn't sure. But I spoke to a lot of folks individually and collectively in groups and person, and almost to a man and to a woman, because about 1/3 of the shamans there that I spoke to were women. They said it was because we had lost faith with our ancestors and had come to value progress more than the reverence for those who came before us. And that was surprising to me, because you know, if you ask me, well, what's the biggest cause, or even the top 10 causes of our problems today, I wouldn't say not worshiping our ancestors. You know, I mean, it seemed almost irrelevant, but as I began to think about it and talk about it, it was like, when we desecrate where our ancestors lived and what they built and what they preserved, we're harming ourselves. It's not just because we're, you know, stepping on their memory, it's because we're harming ourselves. When we build a shopping center over a forest, it's not just we're taking away the beautiful place that they once enjoyed. We're screwing ourselves. They just saw it from that perspective. And it was a fascinating time to be there, because they felt a culmination, a surge of power. There was a transference of power from west to east, and they felt that our commercial aggressiveness was both our downfall and the greatest threat, because they could see how seductive it was to them and to their folks as well. I loved being in Siberia. The other trip I took to Siberia was probably the biggest eye-opener scientifically that I encountered in my search for the meaning of 2012. I had read the work of a Dr. Alexei Dmitriev, who is a geophysicist from the former Soviet Union, who had talked about the potential for planetary catastrophe coming, as he put it, he wrote this in the late 90s, in not tens but ones of years. And his reason for this is because he has determined, he and his team sifted through Voyager spacecraft data. Voyager are a spacecraft that studied the far reaches of the solar system. And he determined that we're moving into an interstellar energy cloud. And moving into a cloud of energy, just it's basic physics, it's basic common sense that if you inject energy into a system, the system reacts. And he felt the Voyager data clearly indicated that we're moving into a cloud of energy, and it had begun to excite the atmospheres of the outer planets of the solar system and was perturbing the sun. And anytime the sun is perturbed, so are we. We're certainly not immune from the disturbances of the sun. And so I found this fellow, at first I thought, well, maybe this guy's a little bit of a, maybe he's a quack. His work was interesting, and it took me 4 months to get him to agree for me to come visit him. And his wife would say, like, well, he's out researching thunderstorms, he'll be back in a month. Oh, this guy's a flake. But his work was interesting, so finally I arranged to fly economy class Aeroflot from Los Angeles to Siberia, which is one heck of a trip, let me tell you, to meet this guy. And when I stopped at my hotel, I got a message saying that he hoped he could keep our meeting but wasn't sure. So I thought, I've traveled halfway around the world and was basically unable to stand up straight after those tiny seats and frankly crummy meals to meet a guy who's going to blow me off. But when I went to where he was, a place called Akademgorodok, I realized it wasn't that he was a quack, but that he was a star. Akademgorodok is a formerly secret scientific research city created after Stalin fell in the former Soviet Union. It was a place not for exile, but to sequester the finest military physicists and others, to keep them away from the prying eyes of the West and also keep them from defecting to the West. But the amenities and the research facilities they were afforded were better than any place else in Russia, and they were really quite good. Recently, as the Cold War has ebbed and capitalism has I think, eclipsed the military nature of the relationship, Akademgorodok has opened up. And I finally caught up with Dr. Dmitriev at a conference that was being held there where scientists from all around the world except the United States were in attendance. And he was the star. He was like the Carl Sagan over there. He had a book and everybody was sidling up to him to show them their monograph or to get an autograph on his latest book. And the fact that I got to spend a couple hours with him made me important. You know the guy's important when you get important just by standing next to him. And he went through his theory of our solar system moving into the interstellar energy cloud. And I was very pleased, and I understood how it could affect the sun, and he felt this would lead to catastrophe on the Earth pretty soon. But it was more color. It was a great story to tell. Fast forward to Christmas Eve 2009, when Nature magazine, possibly the most respected scientific journal in the world, certainly a mainstream, peer-reviewed, highly vetted, highly esteemed journal, reported that indeed the solar system is indeed moving into an interstellar energy cloud, just as Dmitriev had said 15 years before. And that conclusion was based on the same Voyager spacecraft data. But Dmitriev had read the early data and made an interpretation. The scientists who published in Nature and got all the prestige in their profession waited till all the data was in and just simply analyzed it and made the same conclusion. Me, I'll listen to the scientists who can see 15 years ahead, rather than those who wait for 15 more years of data and say, hey, guess what? It's already happened. But either way, it was confirmed emphatically in the paragon of scientific virtue, scientific journalism virtue in the West. So, who knows? The scientists who published in Nature made no conclusions as what the ramifications might be, but Dr. Dmitriev certainly drew his, and he believes that we are at risk for global catastrophe. And he says when you move into an energized system, it's going to affect things. And I said, this is bad news. He said, well, not if you take the long view. So what do you mean? He said, life on Earth has always managed to find a way to handle growing energy inputs. The sun has gotten stronger over the eons, and organisms have handled the full spectrum of radiation and grown more complex and more advanced. And he said, that'll happen again. Of course, in the short term, for human beings, this is not the best news at all. I have a hard time finding solace in the long view. I'm kind of a short view kind of guy. You know, it's folks that I'm worried about. But, you know, maybe you who are watching have a more overarching perspective. I hope so.